නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස. We again come to discuss Girimānanda Sutta. We all know, those who join this Dhamma sharing, what this sutta about. And also, this is a very popular sutta. Even it is mentioned in the Book of Protection. In the Buddhist traditions, very often this sutta is being chanted in order to bless the sick people. And as we mentioned earlier, content of the sutta is very important. By listening to this sutta, Venerable Girimānanda recovered well from his sickness. And then we discussed the three main points, because there are 10 anus we call saññā. Anicca-saññā, anatta-saññā, asubhasaññā, ādīnava-saññā, pahāna-saññā, virāga-saññā, nirodha-saññā, sabbaloke-anabhirata-saññā, sabba-saṅkhāresu anicca-saññā, ānāpāna-sati. It ends with the breathing in and out practice. We have discussed so far anicca-saññā, which means the perception of impermanence, anatta-saññā, which means the perception of absence of soul or self. So today we are going to discuss about the perception of impureness or loathsomeness or impurity. All these 10 mentioned here is a practice of meditation. So it's gradually arranged in the sutta in order to develop our spirituality. Before we are going to start, I would like to recite this sutta, portion of sutta that we are going to discuss later. Katamacananda asubhasaññā idananda bhikkhu imameva kāyaṃ uddhaṃ pādaphala ado kesa mattaka taca pariyantang puraṃ nānappakārassa asucino 𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀 attimasmin kāye kesa loma naka danta tacho mangsang naharu atti minja vakkhaṃ hadayaṃ yakanang kilomakang pihakang pampāsaṃ antang antagunang udariyang karisaṃ pittang semhang kumbo lohitang sedo medo asuvasa kelo singanika lasika muttanti iti masmin kāye asubhanupassī viharati ayaṃ uccatānanda asubhasaññā. the translation of this Pali portion of the sutta. So it is about the perception of unattractiveness. What is the perception of unattractiveness? Here a bhikkhu reviews this very body upward from the soles of the feet and downward from the tips of the hairs, enclosed in the skin, as full of many kinds of impurities. So later it is mentioned, all these 32 body parts, 32 body parts. So all these body parts mentioned. After having mentioned, thus he dwells contemplating unattractiveness in this body. This is called the perception of unattractiveness. Now, it is very important to pay our attention. We all as human beings possess these body parts. For an example, you can think about 𝗘𝗄, 𝗲𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗕𝗵, mansa. We call hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, and so on. And when it is our tradition, when somebody becomes a monk from lay society, actually they have to reflect these first 5 items. We call 𝗘𝗄, 𝗲𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗕𝗏. Then from downwards to upwards, 𝗕𝗏, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗲𝗵, 𝗘𝗄. Again, 𝗘𝗄, 𝗲𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗕𝗏. Then from the end to beginning, 𝗕𝗏, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗲𝗏, 𝗘𝗄. So in this way, even I also remember when I was a small monk, becoming a small boy and expecting to become a novice monk, our preceptor, while cutting our hair, and very first time gave us a small amount of hair taken from our own head, and he kept on my palm, and then asked to repeat these words: 𝗘𝗄, 𝗲𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗕𝗏, 𝗕𝗏, 𝗵𝗵, 𝗏𝗂, 𝗲𝗵, 𝗘𝗄. So that is, I remember when I was actually as a small boy and becoming a novice monk. That is our tradition. And then now we know it is a meditation practice. Asubhasaññā. Asubhasaññā, or practice of we call unattractiveness, is not welcomed by many people. So therefore I list down some questions. So these questions sometimes we can see circulating around the world. Many people may have this kind of questions in their mind. Why did the Buddha prescribe this practice? So we have to think about that. Because some people come with the thought that this is not the teaching of the Buddha, or that is a teaching existed before the Buddha, and then it came down to our tradition. Some people think it is only in the commentaries. So therefore, say they have different ideas, views regarding this this practice. Not only this asubha practice, there is a practice of charnel ground, another practice. So these two especially, something unattractive. So therefore people have a thought of that question in their mind. Why did the Buddha prescribe this practice? So we understand, and then when we go through all these questions below here, main question, we can understand why Buddha prescribed this practice. The relevance of this practice in our spiritual life is obvious. That means in one of the sutta, it is called Vipallaso Sutta, Buddha mentioned we have 4 types of perversions. That means it is not true sense, but we believe it is so. Nicce, anicce, niccang itu vipallaso. The Buddha mentioned there is a perversion in the people that thinking permanence in the impermanency. Thinking permanence in the impermanency. It is called perversion. Anicce, niccang itu vipallaso. Dukkhe, sukhang itu vipallaso. The Buddha mentioned people have another perversion called believing happiness in the suffering. Believing happiness in the suffering. Buddha mentioned here also it is a perversion, vipallasa. Anatte atta iti vipallasa. There is another perversion, believing in self, in not self, anatta, not self. So reality is not self, but people's perversion is self. There is a self. So the last one is asubhasaññā vipallasa. Ordinary level of understanding is that we have that attractiveness in the unattractiveness. Attractiveness in the unattractiveness. These are the four types of perversions Buddha mentioned in the Vipallaso Sutta. Then we can understand it is actually the teaching of the Buddha, not the explanation in the commentary or something not relevant to the Buddhism. I mean, this is the Buddha's explanation, Buddha's own prescription to the spiritual practitioners. So our ordinary understanding is that we see things as permanent always. We things permanent, then chasing after what we think as permanent, because we think it is happy. But of course, when we are chasing after the desire, it gives us suffering. So finally, we understand we are having a perception of attractiveness too. So then that is why Buddha prescribed here to practice this unattractiveness. There is a validity. There is a relevance in our practice. Relevance in the practice. And then Relevance is actually as a human being who is always seeking for sensual pleasure, we have this problem. We are chasing after happiness. It may come, if not today, maybe tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow, maybe next month. So we are, in this way, we are chasing after, thinking about the future, thinking about the past experience. So therefore, the Buddha, one way is that Buddha prescribed this to have a true nature. And then it is to open this physical body and see. Our outer skin is, in a way, is a cover. It's just like a very nice garment. We have a different garments. Different people being born in a different part of the world, they have different types of garments and dressing. In the same manner, we have different skin color and so on. But when the Buddha asks us to penetrate even that, then we can see a true nature. Then there is nothing to be pride and to say this is to have arrogant about so-called body, so-called our physical nature, because true nature is actually, when we open it, we can see true nature. That's why I say 𝗓𝗄𝗄 𝗨 𝗏 danta 𝗵𝗀𝘀. 𝗓𝗄 means body hair. Suppose when we see the hair in our plate of rice, nobody wants to eat it. They feel very disgusting. They think anybody who see this body hair or hair of the head actually in a plate of rice, mostly they feel it is a totally, completely disgusting thing. So sometimes they stop on at the very moment and throw away. You know, when it is in our head, we color it, we do so many things for that. But when we drop into our plates or on the earth, we even do not feel to touch it. So that is the nature. Think about the teeth. We brush teeth. We want to keep our teeth very well. Once it drops, even we do not want to look at it. We do not want to touch it. That is the nature. So that is why Buddha actually open our body, physical body, and shows our true nature. See, if there anything to be pride, be arrogant, is the true nature. Everybody is same, just like this way. Just like I have these kind of impurities, so-called 32 impurities, each and everybody possess this. Then we can reduce our, we call self-centeredness. Then we can reduce our, we call self-centeredness and also self-notion. Instead of that, we can generate compassion. So that is when we think about the first question, is there any values in this practice? Yes, the values is that our negative feelings, harmful feeling can be overcome by looking into our own body in this way. But yes, when we think about my body consists of these 32, actually we can extend furthermore. But however, when we take on even these 32, we can understand true nature. True nature. That nature is not only for me, but my family members, but my friends, even presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, everybody possesses this true nature. So everybody equals, even monks, nuns, monastic practitioners and lay practitioners, everybody possesses this kind of nature of body. Then this reflection reduces our actually sensual pleasure. I mean, we have lust, desire, anger, jealous, and all these kind of defilements can be overcome by practicing this. That is the value of this practice actually. When we understand my body is endowed with these 32 impurities, then gradually I can understand true nature of me. When I recollect others' body also just like same, like me. But you know, in the world, nobody, we do not show our that impurities. Of course, we all the time cover that. So then we do not see the true nature of our body, and then we do not see the true nature of others. That is why we experience all these problems in a way. We have a jealousy, we have a hatred, we have a anger, all these defilements coming into exist, not knowing this true nature. Then we have to understand, I am the person who endowed with these impurities in my body. At the same time, all the other people who are around me also just like me. In this way, we have actually equanimity. You know, when we think this way, at the very moment, we can develop our mentality into a balanced mind. Balanced mind, that is the important thing. So, in this way, I would like to say, these are the values in the practice of this. Then, doesn't it give a negative perception to oneself? Many people raise this question actually. Many people think when we recollect this way, it gives negative perception. You know, I remember once one of our Dhamma friends asked me, why did the Buddha instructed to practice this kind of? So I explained actually, and I here also explain why Buddha prescribed this. So that is to replace the perception of true nature of our body and reduce our defilements. That is the purpose, reduce. So it does not give, if somebody does not know the basic teaching of the Buddha, he or she may think, of course, this is a very negative thinking. Buddhism is, some says that pessimistic. That notion comes from this place. I mean, from this place means when they come into contact with the practice of eternal ground, practice of this loathsomeness, they think actually Buddhism is pessimistic. It is not. It is not. It is totally wrong. In a literary, one can see it is a negative, but truly it is the ultimate nature of positive. If one can actually understand one's own body, which is full of this nature, he does not create any other negative feeling, just like hatred. Whenever it is happening in him, can reduce thinking that, and also lust, and also jealous, so on. We can mention many defilements. One can overcome all these defilements, which is always arising within us. So when we look at this surface level as a literary, it is, yes, you can see it is a negative. But when we go with the Buddha's teaching, Buddha's main teaching, it is not so. It parallelly goes with the Buddha's main teaching. You know, with Buddha's main teaching, we understand Four Noble Truths, then dependent origination, 3 characteristics. So all these are interconnected. When someone has actually considerable knowledge about the Buddha's teaching, Buddha's main teaching, this may not be a problem for him or her. That is why someone, so it may not be accepted by everybody. So it is necessary to understand basic teaching. Otherwise, they come to conclusion it is a negative practice. So I would like to go to next. Is it good for lay people? Another question with regard to charnel ground practice as well as this unattractive practice actually. So a very common question that very often raised. So is it good for lay people? So I must mention here this sutta itself delivered by the Buddha concerning the sick monk. So it is of course a monk. Monk means monk is a monastic practitioner. They have understanding of the Buddha's teaching. Mainly they know what the Buddha taught. So therefore for them, of course, it is no problem at all. But those who do not understand the Buddha's teaching, that may not be useful for them. And then especially this is mainly focused for the monks and nuns. But it does not mean it is not relevant to the lay people. It depends on the individuals. Because even though when we think about the lay society, they are not in equal of understanding. They also have a different understanding. Some people, they have a profound understanding of the Dhamma, while the others, they do not have that kind of understanding of the Dhamma. So therefore, mainly this of course monks can practice. Even though the monks actually, the practice, if they do not know the proper teaching of the Buddha, they may not understand it really. And then I would like to further relate this question with the next question. Does it suitable for everybody? Of course, there are, when we think about the meditation practice, there are 40 meditational subjects in the samatha practice, or we call concentration of meditation. So these are not for everybody, because we have a different temperaments. Different people have different thinking. So, for an example, the Buddha prescribed metta bhavana for the people who get angry very easily. So, metta bhavana is very suitable for them. Then, those who cannot concentrate their mind, we call there's the anapanasati is very suitable. And then those who are lustful is prescribed this loathfulness or loathsomeness or unattractiveness of practice. So according to individual's temperament, there is a relevant practice. So when they practice this relevant meditational practice, actually they can have a better benefits. That is the purpose. So what we discuss here with regard to the unattractive practice, it is mainly for the people who have lustful feeling, lustful thought, those who cannot overcome their lust. So therefore, if the is the person who is full of lust can practice this meditation practice, so they can have a lot of benefit from that. And also I must mention here, whoever practice whatever kind of meditation in Buddha's teaching, they must know three things mainly. At least knowledge-wise, they must know. What is that? Anicca, dukkha, anatta. They must think in terms of anicca, impermanence, suffering, and selfless, not self. So at least they must have a basic understanding of these three teachings. When they have understanding of these three teachings, we call tilakkana, three characteristics. So that will be very good or beneficial for the practitioners. Even those who practice, we call this unattractiveness. So that is why, does it suitable for everybody? I do not say this is good for everybody. It depends on the individual, but one must choose oneself because they understand what kind of temperament within me, what kind of nature that I possess. So then only we can understand and what is to be applied. So, however, everybody must understand inside practice. That means we must, as a Buddhist practitioners, everybody must know anicca, dukkha, anatta. That means impermanence, suffering, and why it is called impermanence, why it is called suffering, why it is the dukkha, why it is called dukkha, and then what is meant by not self. So everybody must have the considerable knowledge of these three things. With that understanding, actually Buddhist practitioner do not find any difficult to practice any kind of practice mentioned in the suttas. So I think if suppose somebody does not understand that basic teaching of the Buddha and just jump to practice this or charnel ground practice or this unattractiveness of the body, so that may be a problem for that person, sure, because this person does not understand true nature of the world, not knowing true nature of the life. Now he is thinking just merely. When that person merely thinking that way, it gives wrong message to that body, that person. That may create a problem in that sense. Otherwise, it may not be a problem. What do we need to know before that? This. What do we need to know before this? This means we call unattractiveness, perception of unattractiveness. Before, we must have basic understanding of the teaching of the Buddha. As I mentioned before, we must have a considerable knowledge of the Buddha. Otherwise, we must not practice even the charnel ground of practice, not knowing anything, just because today the meditation is very common and popular. Therefore, many of them want to practice meditation. But I must tell you here, everybody who comes to practice meditation must have an understanding of Dhamma. If they do not have understanding of Dhamma, they cannot have a benefit from that. Instead of that, they may find some problems in their own practice. So that is why we see some people coming into the practice of meditation, find some difficulties, even psychological problems. So therefore, when somebody practices gradually, they do not find any difficulties. They gradually actually can overcome defilements and improve their spirituality. So these are things that I wanted to share with you under this topic. So we discussed today asubhasaññā. That means asubhasaññā means unattractive. perception of unattractiveness, perception of loathsomeness, impurity of this body. So for that, Buddha actually gave us 32 body parts. So gradually we recollect all these, and then we think my body possesses of all these impurities. Simply thinking, then we can actually reduce our lust, desire. That is the purpose. So you know, ordinary level of thinking is totally different. We always chasing after pleasures, happiness, and then we find of course later on suffering. So that is why we have to cut off this strong attachment to the sensual pleasure. It cannot be done simply. So this method is for that. When somebody thinks in this way, he slowly can reduce his attachment, reduce his lust, reduce his desire for the sensual pleasure. This state of mind that developed by practicing unattractiveness actually open the door for the practice in the Noble Eightfold Path. That is the purpose finally in this practice. Okay, now I would like to stop here sharing, and you can ask the question, any question if you have. Okay, thank you very much for the question. Actually, we must know basic teaching of the Buddha. As I mentioned earlier, we must know anicca, dukkha, anatta. That means the things are impermanence. And then when we think about the permanence, and when we have a perception of permanence, actually, it creates suffering. Then therefore, we must understand this impermanence, perception of impermanence, or we call anicca. We have to think in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta. So, when we have a understanding of three characteristics, Four Noble Truths, actually one can practice even this practice. That means at least they must have an understanding of Four Noble Truths. We call suffering, dukkha. This suffering means first truth, cause of suffering, desire, and then cessation, and then path leading to the cessation of suffering. At least they must have a understanding of Four Noble Truths. I mean complete understanding, knowledge. Not I'm not saying that what we call that practical understanding. That means practical understanding comes later. Very beginning we must have knowledge. We call it Suttamaya Jnana, Sutta book knowledge. At least we must read the Four Noble Truths, how it mentioned in the suttas, how it explained in our Buddhist traditions. And then when we have a considerable understanding of this Four Noble Truth, basically, actually we do not find a problem of practice of this, because we understand this practice will help us to improve our practice of Noble Eightfold Path. We must have a considerable knowledge of Four Noble Truths. Yes, one thing is we have to understand true nature of our own body. When we look at outer appearance of our body, it increases sometimes anger also, not always happiness, unhappiness, happiness, all these things. But when we open this body, then we understand true nature of the body. That true nature is not only me, but everybody. Everybody, even the animals, even human beings, it is common thing. But when we do not know that, we think it is only me that possess all these. But somebody who is living neighborhood does not have this kind of nature. He or she may have a different body. But when we understand true nature, open up our own body, physical, then we see true nature is this. And then that is a very, very interesting understanding. That understanding comes from this actually, this practice. Yes, there are 10 types of perception. So this is another way of looking at the body and life and the phenomena we experience. So last time, especially about the anatta, not self. The atta or self notion originates from our sensory experience. That is the place where it originates. We discussed that matter there. This one actually different from that. This is about, we have a notion of attractiveness, asubhasaññā, attractiveness, everything good. When we have a notion or perception of good, actually, you know, we do not think this factor in deep. You know, if you go through your own experience in your daily life, suppose you say something which you saw is very nice, very good. Once you appreciated it, it happened in your psychology. Next time, you go further, more step to grab it. Now, once we accepted that, oh, it's nice, it's good, it creates more and more thoughts about that. Later on, we want to possess it. So, this practice, in a way, it creates, it neutralizes our feeling. It brings us to the 𝗵𝗊𝘀𝗀, equanimity. Does not give more, opportunity to have a defilement. So especially this is targeting the lust, desire. Yeah, actually, restraint or avoidance is with regard to the 𝗓𝚗. You understand? With regard to the 𝗓𝚗 or virtue. 𝗓𝚗 means you are avoiding certain things. In a way, you observe 5 steps, then you avoid to do certain things. And then when So, sila is actually avoiding. This way of again, I hear that. So, this perception actually is with the understanding. You know, when we understand, it naturally happens in us. When we recollect these body parts, nothing to restrain anything. But when we recollect, naturally it reduces our, it is possible to reduce our lust at the moment. I'm not saying if somebody practice this one time and it happened all his life. No, it does not happen like that. And also, I'm not saying that it is suitable for everybody. It is suitable for those who are lustful and desire and difficult to control their lust. Then they can see true nature of the body. And then nothing to restrain, because we are following the precept to restrain. This, when we practice this, it gives us correct perception. That correct perception avoid us from defilements. Yes, we must follow as a foundation the sila, virtue. Then we create one protective fence actually around us. From that point, we practice this. Then actually we can have a correct perception. So you see these practices named as perception, saññā. It is also created by our own thought. It is a creation of our own creation. That creation is good because it reduces our lust. When we reduce our lust, we can practice the Noble Eightfold Path much better. Okay, thank you. Okay. Actually, before we are going to practice meditation, as I mentioned earlier, we must understand the purpose of practice and values of the practice, and we must have a considerable knowledge of the Buddha's teaching. Then we have created favorable background for the practice. Then I come to your question. Then actually we must know the meaning of these words. You know, 𝗓𝗄 is body hair, 𝗤𝗵 is, sorry, 𝗓𝗄 is hair of the head, 𝗤𝗵 is body hair. All the words meaning, you know, one by one we must know. And also one who is willing to practice this must understand each and every factors mentioned here clearly. Then he can start from one by one, 𝗓𝗄, 𝗤𝗵, 𝗏𝗏, 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 and up to the end. Okay. Then from the end also he can start up to the beginning, top to bottom, bottom to top. And also another practice is you can select 5, 1 to 5. Okay, 𝗓𝗄, 𝗤𝗵, 𝗏𝗏, 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 then 𝗏𝗏, 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 𝗤𝗵, 𝗓𝗄. Whenever you repeat it, actually it is to repeat with meaningfully. Then only you are mindfully there. Your mindfulness must be there. Wisdom must be there. Because sati sampajañña. With the sati sampajañña, we can practice. And then we know it. We are mindfully practice. We know what we are practicing. Then actually it improves. Then 5 by 5 you can practice. 1 to 5, then 5 to 1, and so on. You can complete. It takes long time, then just like other meditational practice, we can have a benefit from that. Visualize, yeah, if you can visualize also very good. I mean, then you can see all these things, because you are not, your mind is very well focused then, well focused. Your mind is not going here and there, you know, one by one, you know, mindfulness is there. You are totally aware. And then the purpose is there, because we have to awaken mindfulness. We have to improve our insight. When we have that, when we practice meaningfully and visualize it, of course, we can practice very clearly. It improves our practice. Here, you see, you can see hair of the body, hair of the, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, and spleen, lungs, intestine, so on. All these body parts are here up to the urine. So when we tell somebody, this is very funny, right? Funny, those who do not understand Dhamma. Those who understand Dhamma, it is not a funny thing. They understand it as it is. Yeah. But when we say, when we say somebody, this is our practice, is the perception of unattractiveness. Somebody who does not know may laugh, relevant to him or her, or his understanding is not there, or he is not having good enough of understanding of Dhamma. So we know why we practice it. We know the purpose. We know the benefit. So actually, you have to go through all these 32 factors one by one. You must know the meaning. If you can repeat in Pali, much better. But in this also no problem. But whatever way you repeat, better to know the words. Yeah, this is one of the practice actually, because there are many practices in the prescribed by the Buddha. This is one of them. We can use it. We can use it. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for the question. So, of course, when we face some difficulties, we experience stress, depression. But why, when we have to question, why do we have stress? Why do we have depression? Because the things does not come our way. We are expecting something, this must come this way. It must happen this way and that way. When
Very
this
true,
thing,
Bhante.
yeah, when this thing does not happen, then we have a disappointment with that. When we welcome it, actually, it is not only for me. It is every human being has to undergo this nature. So when we commonize this, generalize this way, actually, we have to accept, I am also one of the human beings. I am not accept this. Even the Buddha himself had to face this situation. Then what about me? So when we think this way, we can reduce our depression and stress. That is why Buddha said that we have to see the true nature. True nature is we are jati, jara, vyadi, mara. You know, we are born. Now we have aging, sickness, final death.
And death.
Nobody except can escape from these.
Correct.
Nowadays we are facing vyadi, sicknesses, right? Sicknesses.
Correct.
So why we want to worry? Because if it is not today, maybe tomorrow it may happen to us, right? We cannot escape. When we accept this true nature is nobody can escape this problem. We have to accept it, but at the same time we work for betterment. We accept it, but we do our best to protect ourselves. That's all. When we understand this overall, actually, we can reduce our depression, and that is why Buddha say, Buddha asks us to think about impermanence. Last week we discussed impermanence. I actually here not merely I mean not a physical organ, but process of seeing is the I. I is, if we further analyze this I, that means when it comes to process of seeing, only we see the I. Okay. And other, we have a flesh eye. This flesh eye cannot, merely flesh eye does not produce seeing. With the connection of the consciousness, it functions as I. I also appear and disappear from moment to moment. Ear also appear from moment to moment. It is not permanent. It is not 24 hour. Our eye. Yes. Suppose now suddenly this sunlight no more. So we all, even though we have flesh eye, even though we have a consciousness, we cannot see, right? We need light. Condition. And then we have to understand everything is conditionally arisen. Whatever produced by condition, that come to cease, that come to change. This is the true nature. We have to, according to Buddhist practitioners, at least we can reduce our stress. At least, yes. So you ask the second question. So brother, then suppose all human beings, we are chasing after happiness by rejecting the unhappiness. Our purpose is every moment to experience happiness. When we are chasing, then what happens when we do not have that what we expect, we disappointed, then we experience unhappiness. So what we call one of the happiness is sensual pleasure. So sensual pleasure, moment by moment, increase desire and craving. Whenever we increase desire and craving, actually, it leads a lot of problems, harm even to oneself and others. So today, when we look at the social crimes, we can understand the main source of the crimes is actually lust desire, and craving. When we practice this, it reduces gradually our lust, our desire, our craving. For an example, suppose somebody truly practicing these 32 body parts, right? And ultimate he is practicing. Then what happens? At the very moment, he can reduce his lust, and when he reduces his lust, naturally it produces actually equanimity. It naturally creates equanimity. You know, we think, for an example, I have very big, before I practice, I have a perception of attractiveness. I think my body is very good. Then I think further and further more about this perception. Then actually it creates other problems too. We don't need to explain all this, but we have that lustful nature. Then we practice that. This is the antidote for the lust. It naturally creates, when you do not have any more lust, then it is equanimity. Yeah, when suppose somebody is having a lustful thoughts, then he practice, then it comes to zero of lust. That means equanimity. It can, yes, but actually if somebody does not know the Buddha's teaching, he may go to another end, hatred, you know. We must have a basic foundation of Buddha's knowledge. Then when we practice, it comes to 0 point. If you do not have that understanding, then we go to another end. That means hatred. I hate myself. Then I hate other people. So Buddhism actually reduces these both ends, hatred and desire. Come to the middle point. It depends on the individual. Before we practice this, we must actually go through, this must be very familiar for us. Even meaning, even words, even the practice, even the purpose of practice, all this must be very familiar before we are going to practice. And then it depends on if you want to practice 5 minutes, if you want to practice 1 minute, is also possible. But it depends on the quality of your